Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Good afternoon.
We are on episode 36.
37, talking about
37? 36.
Wait, yeah, 36.
30.
Yeah, we're on 36.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're talking about
2
education.
+ 2 = fish.
The American education system,
Yeah.
where they don't teach us anything useful.
Precisely.
That's all you have to know about this episode. That's what we're talking about.
I think we can sum it up right there and call it an episode.
Yep. All right. See you guys later.
Useless.
Oh my gosh. But I mean, that's kind of how I've always felt. Like, I was very aware of that even in school, that like this is not going to help me in real life, you know? I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but
Yeah, there's definitely like a point in like middle school to high school, especially when your teachers kept on telling you that you were going to have to use cursive every single day of your life for the rest of your life. And then you started learning about like advanced things in like cells and science. And then you start learning about more letters in math than you do numbers. And it's just like,
why?
It's ridiculous.
Like, going into it, like, I'm not going to use this.
Yeah.
And that was weird because, like, I was talking about this the other day. Remember when teachers would be like, you're not going to always have a calculator on you. Bitch, yeah, we do.
Yeah,
like,
we have a calculator, we have a dictionary, we have the answer to everything. Like,
everything.
we're good.
I mean, we watched, like, I feel like our generation definitely saw the shift of like generations, because like technology came and then all of a sudden everything that they were teaching us was outdated, and it's still outdated, you know, because they haven't fixed it to the time that we're in now. And it's like,
and it doesn't seem like they're going to anytime soon either.
No, because that would take, I don't know, like it works for them to be in like that old structured way. Like the fact that we're reading textbooks from like 40 years ago or reading like bullshit like history that doesn't make an impact on our life.
Yeah,
like,
and is the history even true, or is it just what's written?
Right. It's like that's what it's written to like tell us, or tell us that was true, you know? I talk about this with my dad a lot, but like when I was in school, I didn't really learn about 9/11, and I was like 6 when that happened, you know? So it's like, why didn't I hear more in depth about that once I was in high school? Why didn't we learn that in American history? Because that's very recent American history. I mean, this year is 20 years ago 9/11 happened, which is insane. But like, that is like current American history. Like, I don't think we've learned anything past like, you know, like the 1950s or 60s or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's all very messed up.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to like take that back to, I think that the core reason why school has not been changed, this can go back to one of the Rockefellers back in, I think, 1903 or sometime back in the early 1900s. He was the first person to put together the education system. He put over $180 million towards the General Board of Education, I believe it was.
What?
And then he has a quote that he said, and it was something along the lines of, I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers. And then
that's like what our country's
that's exactly
based on.
it. Yeah. So like everything we're taught in school is to teach us how to work more. It's not to teach us how to live. It's not to teach us how to be happy. It's not to teach us how to function in society. It's just how to work.
Yeah.
So at some point back in like the mid 1950s or something along those lines, the General Board of Education disbanded. But you can go back in and you can see now the people that are invested in the school board and the education system, they don't necessarily have the best, you know, agenda for what we're being taught.
It's pretty much that same structure of like, we are building people to work in our society, like you're saying. And I mean, doesn't that make so much sense that when you're in high school, you don't learn how to manage your money and like you don't learn necessary things to live? It's like they don't want you to be capable of like free thinking and like being able to think for yourself. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I've taken from all of it is that why don't you learn about debt? Why don't you learn about credit card interest and like, you know what I mean? Just like useful, like actual shit, because wouldn't it make sense for the government to make money off of us? Or, you know, I don't want to say like
keep us in the rat race.
Yeah, like exactly, where we would need to rely on those jobs that we're working for to pay off debt, or jumping into a fucking like school loan as soon as you're 18 because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. It's like it works for them. So why would they teach us how to not do that?
And like almost in the same way that the war on drugs was like taking place, I think it was the war on drugs back in like the 60s and 70s when everyone started following like the hippie movement, and they're like, we're not interested in fighting your wars, we're not interested in doing any of these things that go along with society, like we just want to like sit around, love each other, we want to do all these things, massive revolution. And then at that point they outlawed drugs because they realized that they were allowing people to like think freely.
Oh, true.
They were saying like that acid was making people like jump out of windows and like go on killing sprees and all these things, but like it was more so just to outlaw these drugs because they realized that if they didn't stop that, everyone was going to start thinking. Right. We're just going to have a nation of people thinking instead of working.
Clearer and like for themselves.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't even think about that era of time.
Yeah. So like if you think about that too now, if instead of the education system we had now, if we had classes that taught you how to garden, how to do your credit, how to set a budget, how to love other people, how to get in touch with your emotions, how to deal with emotional pain, emotional struggles, how to strengthen yourself as who you are inside instead of just turning you into a walking, talking textbook and calculator.
Right.
Like, what good does that do us?
It's so robotic. Public school system is literally like one of the worst things for your like developing brain. Did you like, what's your story with school? Because I went to a public school for a little bit, and I'll tell my story, but I actually ended up going to a Montessori school, which is a wholly like a completely different like style of learning. It's
a major experience change.
But go ahead, you go first.
So I was gifted throughout elementary school, like straight A's, 4.0 GPA.
You went to a public school?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to a good public school. And then I think like 4th grade or 5th grade, some things that I can trace back to like some childhood stuff, I kind of started pulling back on school a little bit. My interest kind of got lost in doing so well. And then middle school, that's when everything started changing. Like I was still good in some subjects, but I started dropping on the others because the importance of school was like not with me anymore. And then I think 7th grade, I'll never forget this. And I owe the world to my grandpa for him doing this for me. But he sat me down one night and he was basically like giving me a whole rundown and a talk about how college wasn't worth it anymore. Wow. And this is back in 7th grade. And like I had no real plans, no ideas what I was doing yet, but he pretty much told me, and this is coming from someone that like went to college and like believes in like all these things. He was like, it's probably not worth it for you to go to college. You should look into like a technical school or something like that, because if you go into college, you're going to get a degree and you're going to be working it off until you're 40, 50 years old. Degrees aren't really helping people anymore. So
and you
that
don't
was
stay in that one job anymore for 40 years.
So that was like a turning point for me then. And then after that, I think my entire like history in school was basically just like, I'm doing this to get my diploma and then I'm out of here. And then in high school, there was like several times too when I started getting into like reading books. I was actually trying to, I think, start like a car audio company because I was like super into that. And I was like running or reading books about like how to become like an audio installer, like how to run an audio shop and do that stuff. So like that's where my entrepreneurial side started.
Cool.
But then like all throughout high school, like I think I passed with like a 2.01 GPA because I just didn't give a fuck.
You didn't care.
I failed geometry 4 times and I got expelled from high school. So like, I hated school. Absolutely hated school. But I love learning now. I'm obsessed with learning now, but not in the school sense.
Right. Like how they were trying to teach and what they were trying to teach you didn't resonate with you. That's crazy. But it makes sense that you can have the ambition, but if it's not there for what the school is like trying to teach you, like you're not going to thrive. You know, like I was a terrible test taker. Like I've always tried really hard in school, and that was like really hard for me. Like through elementary school, like I went to a public school in like kindergarten and 1st grade, and I was having like severe like panic attacks and anxiety, and like with a lot of the like inner child work I've been doing, I've been able to relate it to things that happened at home that was making me so anxious at school. But like sitting in a chair and in a public school needing to like look at the teacher and listen was the hardest thing for me. It wasn't really like ADD. It was just like I panicked. Like I was constantly like suffering with anxiety at like 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
Because I couldn't feel like free. Like I couldn't feel like I could get up and like move around, and like I had a really difficult time. Like that was probably like a peek of some of my like childhood anxiety. And then my mom found a Montessori school. It was like a charter school, so it was like free to go to. Usually Montessori schools are private and you have to pay a lot of money to go, of course, you know, because it's like a different style of learning. But it was free, and it just opened in like 2002. So I went there in 2nd grade, and I stayed there until 8th grade. Like the first day, I remember like they had different themed days. So like Thursdays you wore your pajamas to school, like Friday you got to wear like certain things, and like I don't know, it was just like more of like a real like hands-on learning experience. Cool. Yeah, so like everyone would like sit in a circle in the beginning of the like in the morning. Like there was desks, but they were like tables, so that was just like part of the room. And then there was like the big like circle that you met on, and everyone like, I don't know, it was just like a group meeting in the morning. And then we had like lesson plans. So like every day the kids would pick, like you would have a lesson plan and you would circle what you were going to do that day. And you'd pick from a list of things that you were going to like complete. And you pretty much got to choose, as long as you weren't doing like the same thing every day, how your day was going to go. It's That's teaching so cool. like individual like learning structure. And like the way you would learn would be like, I don't know, like instead of doing math like pen and paper, there was this like game, there was this thing called the stamp game, and you would do like, you would take different stamp like pieces. They were kind of like Scrabble pieces, I guess I could explain it. And you would do multiplication with the pieces. So you were physically putting it down. So your mind is learning differently than, 2 + 2 is 4. You would take physical stamps and move them around. And you would understand, okay, 2 physical pieces. It's just like hands-on learning. That's what it was. So it was so much different for me, and my anxiety like really stopped after that. And then I went back to public school in high school, and that anxiety came back again, because it was like, you need to sit here and listen to me. And like, it was so crazy that was like such a traumatizing experience for me, because that's what so many people were like, that's what most people are used to needing to do. It's like being a zombie and looking at the teacher and watching one way. Like, it was just weird that my body like literally rejected that from such a young age, you know?
Yeah. So, that's such an interesting and different way of like experiencing school. I can't imagine if I had gone to a school like that.
Right. Like it doesn't actually work for a lot of kids, because like if you're not independent, like if you need to be told what to do, like it will not work for you and you will fail. Like a lot of kids that have tried to like do Montessori school, like they're not, like they don't know how to just take initiative and like learn. Like if you don't want to learn, you won't learn. And like I actually struggled a lot. Like in 3rd grade, I got held back because I couldn't read that well. And because there was no one pretty much telling me, hey, you have to choose to read more, I fell behind, and I failed 3rd grade. But with how the school system worked in Montessori, like I was always with, like, your classroom didn't just have your grade. Like you had multiple grades in one classroom. So like no one really knew that I failed until it was like test taking time, and I'd have to be in like the lower grade. But I ended up like catching up in 7th grade. Like I took the FCAT for 7th grade. God. Do you remember that?
Fuck the FCAT.
That's why I failed, was because I didn't pass the reading in 3rd grade, and I failed the whole fucking grade.
So you can get straight A's all year, but if you take an FCAT and you fail it, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. Fuck the FCAT. And then you have
to like, I mean, I don't think they have it anymore, but I'm sure there's
another type of test
like that. Yeah. So in 7th grade, I ended up like skipping. I took the 6th grade one, and I took like the 7th grade one, and I passed it like exceedingly, so I was able to just go straight into 8th grade. So but yeah, that had like such, like that's why I don't ever feel smart, because I always thought like, oh, because I failed like 3rd grade, I'm stupid. Like that to this day is like my trigger, is like that I don't feel like smart.
Interesting.
Yeah. And my mom remembers me saying that like as a kid. She's like, you would come home from school and say you weren't one of the smart ones. And that's just like so sad, you know? So
yeah, incredibly.
Yeah, because like now I'm like, I feel like I know a lot.
Yeah, you do.
know? So it's just like a different type of like smart. But anyway, long story, but yeah, if like anyone that has kids right now, I would definitely look into Montessori school, because it's a self-taught teaching system.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I never heard about that until you had mentioned it.
Really?
And like back to you saying that you didn't feel smart and like going back to test taking and stuff like that. There's a cartoon that is around on the internet. I think it was like a newspaper comic or something like that. And it was like a bear, a snake, a giraffe, a squirrel, and a whale or a goldfish or something like that. And the test for school was to climb up the tree as fast as you can. One of them was a monkey. And they're like, okay, now everyone go climb up the tree as fast as you can. And like, obviously the monkey is going to climb up the tree fast because that's the skill. But just because like everyone else can't do that doesn't automatically make them stupid. Like everyone has their strengths. Everyone has the things that they're good at. But when you put someone inside of a public school system, you're basically taking away all of their creativity, originality, and everything that makes them them. And you're sticking them inside of like a fucking cookie cutter, taking off all the edges.
It's like you can't judge one person's abilities off of another. Like that's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow. That's such a good like analogy for it, you know?
And it seems like not always the case now, but like a majority of my friends that didn't continue their education after school and like didn't do too well in school, they're doing the best now.
Really?
And my friends that were like straight A students, got scholarships, went to college, like they're kind of behind. Like,
or they've like
just from my experience of what I've seen, like from the people I know, it seems like the people that didn't continue on with like formal education are doing much better.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like there's also a sense of tradition with people that went the route of school and like, you know, they're just kind of following what's happened in the past. Like, okay, you go to school for 4 years. You'll probably notice that they're in like a serious relationship and they're probably getting married. Like it's a very like structured, like this is the path that was carved 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And they almost live that traditional lifestyle. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like if you are a freaking doctor and you're like found, you know what I mean? Like that is a route that a lot of people take, and that's awesome because I'm sure they're making a lot of money in the medical field, but like it's almost like paved for them with school. Like it's like that route is already like, hey, this is what you do next. But people that don't go to school, they have a different sense of like, okay, what am I gonna do? Like no one's telling me what to do, you know?
And then it makes me wonder too, the people that have that path paved out for them are the ones that like their parents are like, you're gonna, from the time they're born, they're like, I can't wait until you're a doctor or a lawyer or whatever they said. Sad. If those people had gone off on their own and taken their own route, and instead of going in the same route that's been molded for them their whole life, and instead they followed like their passions or what makes them happy, like how much of a different or better life could they have? Yeah. Because like, yeah, it's cool. Like if you're making your parents happy by becoming a lawyer and you're spending all your life going to school for that and you're doing all these things, but like what about you?
Right.
Like what do you internally want to do? Not what your parents want you to do, not what anyone else wants you to do. Like what makes you happy?
Yeah. I mean, I do have friends that are in those like those positions. Like my best friend is a lawyer. Like I have some really good friends that my friend Haley's like a pharmacist and she's such a badass, and it's like those are routes to get to, you know what I mean? Like to get to something else. Like with Heather, she like plans to be a lawyer for a little bit, but that's not her forever goal. Like that is a stepping stone for her next thing. So it's like, do that if you can see where that's going to lead you to where you have the independence, to the freedom of what you really want to do. You know what I mean? Like if that's a stepping stone for you, then that's great. But it's like, don't expect to get into a job that you work really hard and like spend a lot of hours doing and then not be happy for like the rest of your life. You know, it's like if you're doing those jobs, like make sure it's like, you know, what you actually want to do. And like you said, like you're not influenced by someone else to become that thing, because in reality you have to deal with it like every day. And like those are things, again, back to like the school system, that they don't set you up to think about. Like they don't want you to think for yourself and like, oh, do I want to be a doctor for 40 years? Like they don't want you to think like that. So it's like a very interesting thing, because the way, especially the younger generation now, they are so much more aware of things that we weren't aware of.
Information age, social media.
Like it's not gonna work. Like they are more like evolved than we were at that time, and we're aware of it, you know? So that's just going to be like, bullshit to them. Like,
Yeah.
it's so outdated.
I think one of the biggest advantages to like the upcoming generations that are in school but like are a part of the information in the digital age is that now, like back when we went to school, we kind of went off of what people told us like we were supposed to do, but we still had some freedom and we still had some access to like introduction technology, like the beginning of YouTube. But now the kids that are on like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, like they're getting to see all these alternative ways of living, like these vloggers, the people that travel around the world, the people that run their own businesses, the people that are doing all these things. And like there's literally infinite resources on YouTube. Like you could start your own business and become a millionaire before you leave high school if you really tried.
Right.
Like everything you need to do that is there now.
Is already available.
And we
school
had
isn't
like
gonna do that.
a little bit of that, but like nothing like what kids nowadays have. Like there's infinite possibilities if you are like in school, just getting out of school, you're young. Literally anyone can do anything now.
Yeah, like they don't need like this. Okay, like next step is this, and like everything is already available to them.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you conform to like what school is trying to tell you to do? Like it's just not. And I mean, even with COVID changing like how school is being facilitated now, like we're already on the way. You
Walking across the stage on your laptop in your living room. That's insane.
I mean, that's so sad. Like people that are in high school right now, like that fucking sucks. Like you did all the work to get to like the best part of school or whatever, and like actually college would suck even more because
no
like
prom,
college is supposed to be
nothing like that.
Like the positive and like the good parts of school is like now not a thing. I don't know. Do you feel like, I feel like there's a lot of things we haven't touched on. Would you want to do like a part 2?
Yeah, absolutely. We could definitely do another episode for this.
Okay, cool. So should we wrap this one up?
Yeah.
Okay. Great, guys. Well, listen to part 2 because we only have a few more minutes. So we're going to separate this.
Part 2 coming. If I don't know where I was going with that, I'll cut that out.
All right. Just go to the next part.
Yeah.
Bye.